What up, Orlandis and Demetria? It's me, as you know. Just want to go over the history exam again before it pops up on Tuesday. My voice is still parched, so I probably was sounding a little weird yesterday on my other video. Um, so I'm gonna basically go over the terms again. I finished all the terms and I have sent them out to you guys. I sent both of you the terms defined already. So check your emails and Dimitri, I sent it to you on Facebook. And I'm making up a following video. So I'm gonna try to go over everything, all the terms this time if I can. My voice is parched still, so pardon me if I sound a little weird. I'm gonna be drinking some tea, some iced tea to help me with my throat. Um, but let's just get into it before I just get going in terms of defining all the terms. Again, this the study guide she gave us. You would want to talk about the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and why it's significant. I put that on the study guide that I sent you guys. I highlighted everything. If you have any questions or if you're confused about something, let me know as soon as possible. Just as soon as possible, the better. Also, the short answer multiple choice. There's going to be 10 of those, so I'm going to try to make a mock test. And once I do that mock test, I'm going to send it to you guys just to see if you get it. And hopefully you get all the answers correct or whatever. And then I'm going to send you 9 identification terms. And then I'm going to send you the essay probably tonight or tomorrow. So you guys can take a look at the essay before you get a chance to do the exam. But that's pretty much it. And also I want to say that as far as the terms, go to Mrs. Professor Hernandez PowerPoint. Go to her PowerPoint because she breaks down everything that happened in chronological order. So if you want to go there, the PowerPoint, I think for the conservative part, you want to go to the PowerPoint that says it's hip to be square. That's where everything starts when Nixon practically get in there and everything. So you want to start with that PowerPoint first. It's hip to be squared and look at the rest of the PowerPoints afterwards. But all the terms are there, so do not go online, because if you go online and try to look up the terms that way, half of them you're going to get wrong because they really don't have anything to do with what you taught in class. So be very careful, very, very careful. And I'm going to talk about that as I go on defining the rest of these terms. So I'm just going to go ahead and get into it. With the first term. The first term is National Review. And as I told you yesterday, the National Review is was founded in I believe 1955. 1955. So you want to stress that 1955. That's the when part. Remember the when, where, what, why, how is it significant? 1955 is the when. So when you define National Review, just put 1955. Who founded it? Who founded it was William F. Buckley. He's a conservative. He's a moderate conservative. He's the founder of this magazine. And you got to give a reason why. What was the significant part of him bringing out this magazine? And so I'm going to define it for you right now. But basically what the National Review is you can just write it like this. In 1955, William F. Buckley founded this magazine. It's a conservative magazine that is more moderate in its thinking as opposed to John Birch Society, who was right-wing in their thinking. William F. Buckley and his staff appealed to folks because of his moderate stance. So that's the significant part, because the magazine represented a philosophy, a conservative philosophy that defended the Christian values, free market economics, personal liberties, and things like that without being irritating to people like John Birch Society was. So basically, you want to state it like this. In 1955, William F. Buckley founded the National Review magazine. William F. Buckley is a conservative. who's moderate in his thinking, and his staff were moderate, and it appealed to independents and regular working class folks, and they defended the conservative principles, Christian values, limited government, government for sure, free market economics, and that's pretty much it. They represented the intellectual part of the conservative movement. Just put it like that. Whatever I wrote down that I sent to you, look at that, and then you guys can decipher however you want to word it when you do your test. Also, on your index card, when you do the terms, write the terms on your index card and define it. Define it in your own way. You know what I'm saying? The John Birch Society is another term. The John Birch Society is just like the National Review. They're both conservative organizations and movements. But the John Birch Society was very right-wing, extreme. They're like the Tea Party. Like I told you in the other video, they're like the Tea Party of today. They were crazy, just right-wing. So, but this is how you would want to define the John Birch Society. They were extreme. They were an extreme right-wing organization founded in 1958. They were anti-communist. They were against nuclear disarmament. What I mean by that is they were pro-military. So, for example, in Vietnam, people were protesting against the war. John Birch Society was like, no, we should be supporting our troops. So even though the war might have been wrong, John Birch Society still wanted to support the war because of the troops. Let's support the troops. But so you can put it like that. But let me redefine it for you again. The John Birch Society were an extreme right-wing organization founded in 1958. They were anti-communist. They were pro-military. They were against civil rights. They were for small government, which means limited government. They were for small government. They hated the federal government. You can put it like that. So just leave it at that, and you'll be fine. Another term is Young Americans for Freedom. And again, I went over some of these terms in my other video, but I'm just going back over it so I don't confuse you guys. Young Americans for Freedom was formed in 1960 at William F. Buckley's home in Sharon, Connecticut. So again, I just named the organization, when they were formed, who they are. The location was in Sharon, Connecticut, so you want to put that down. And then the significance, which I'm going to tell you about in a second. So this is how you would want to define it. Young Americans for Freedom formed in 1960 at William F. Buckley's home in Sharon, Connecticut. There were a bunch of young conservatives who met and organized to form the organization, and the purpose of them getting together was to combat the left-wing or liberal movement like SDS. That was occurring at the college campuses. SDS was a liberal movement. You saw all the hippies and all that stuff. Young Americans for Freedom was the right-wing version of that. I ain't gonna say right-wing; they were the conservative version of that. So this is how you would want to define it again. Young Americans for Freedom formed in 1960 at the William F. Buckley's home in Sharon, Connecticut. There were a bunch of young conservatives who met to organize and form an organization. The purpose of getting together was to promote conservative principles. And that's really all you need to say. They were for small government, they were for personal freedoms, etc. So, and I wrote it down in a definition for you guys to take a look at. So you should have the terms I sent it to you already. Alright. The next term on her list, it is the Sharon Statement, which this is connected with the Young Americans for Freedom. Okay, so you're going to define the Sharon Statement. You want to say this: the Sharon Statement. The Young Americans for Freedom met at William F. Buckley's home and made this document to defend conservative principles. They defended Christian values, free market economics, personal freedoms, and most important, small government, which means they were anti-federal government. Everything that today's Republicans will defend. They were a response to the SDS. This was a response to the SDF's Port Huron statement, which was a liberal document, if you will. So that's how you would want to define a Sharon statement. The Sharon statement was a document that was put, just say it like this. The Sharon statement was a document that defended conservative principles that was put together by the Young Americans for Freedom at William F. Buckley's home. The purpose of this document was to combat or respond to SDS Port Huron statement. And the conservative principles were things like personal freedom, free market economics, Christian values, but the most important thing is small government. Write that. That would be a perfect answer. Okay. The next term on her list is Barry Goldwater. Okay. Now, again, when you go online, you're gonna look up Barry. If you let's just say if you go online and try to look up Barry Goldwater, it's gonna say he was a senator from Arizona and all that stuff, which is true. But you don't want to rely on that. You go to her PowerPoints instead because it's stuff that she went over in class. If you try to go online and look up Barry Goldwater, you're going to potentially get some wrong information. And if you put that wrong information on the test, she can tell that you went online. She's going to know that you went online and it's plagiarism, and you don't want to get in trouble. So don't go online looking for Barry Goldwater. So I'm giving you the answer right here, so you don't have to go online. So Barry Goldwater is a term. So this is how you would want to define Barry Goldwater. Barry Goldwater was a senator from Arizona. He is considered to be one of the founders of conservatism. He ran for president in the 1964 election against Lyndon B. Johnson, promoting conservative principles, but lost to Johnson. That's all you need to put. That's it. That is it. So, and I put that in the term. Like again, you get your terms, you should see that. You don't need to go online looking for that, because if you go online looking for Barry Goldwater, they're going to be talking about his governor, his career as far as being a senator and all that stuff, and you're going to end up getting some wrong information. So what I just defined there for Barry Goldwater, you want to put that. Another term, Ronald Reagan. That's another term. Again, you want to avoid going online looking for Ronald Reagan because he was president. Ronald Reagan was president from 1980 to 1988, and I'm pretty sure some students in class will be putting that he was president, and you don't want to do that. Don't do that. When you see Ronald Reagan, people are going to automatically think president and write that down. But she's talking from a 1960s perspective. Ronald Reagan was not president. He was not president. So do not put that on your on the exam. Don't put he was president, because you will get it wrong, and then she's going to be thinking you went online. So this is the best way to define Ronald Reagan relative to her class. Ronald Reagan was a supporter of Barry Goldwater's. He spoke at the Republican National Convention and got tons of support from conservatives after his speech. This is the kind of impact Ronald Reagan had for conservatives when he gave his speech during the 1964 election. So let me just say, for example, Barack Obama, and I put the link at the bottom. I put Barack Obama's 2004 Democratic speech, and then I put Ronald Reagan's Republican National speech in 1964. The reception that Barack Obama got from Democrats was huge. It made him so popular. Barack Obama immediately got fame. He was very popular with the whole entire country. Ronald Reagan had that similar type of response in 1964. People liked that speech a lot. So that's what you want to put. Do not put that he was president. So that's why I put the links there. So again, I'm going to redefine it for you right quick. Ronald Reagan was a supporter of Barry Goldwater's. He spoke at the Republican National Convention in 1964 and got tons of support from conservatives after his speech. That's all you need to put. And then you can also add that he was considered to be one of the founders of conservatism as well. Um, that's all you need to put. That is it. Um, the next term. The next term is Dixiecrat. And basically, what Dixiecrat is, people. This is what Dixiecrats is. Basically, this was people who were Democrats in the South that had issues with the civil rights stuff in 1948. That was going on down there. This caused tension between Southern Democrats, and many formed the State Rights Party, which broke up many of the Democrats. That's all you need to put. That's all you need to put. Okay, and I'm going to repeat that again. Dixiecrats. It's basically are people who were Democrats in the South that had issues with civil rights stuff in 1948. Civil rights stuff that was on a federal level in 1948. And because of the civil rights issues that was happening in the South, this caused tension between Southern Democrats, and many formed the State Rights Party, which broke up many of the Democrats. This is the beginnings of the Southern strategy of This is the beginning of Southern states starting to support Republicans. Now, at this point, when they did that, the Democrats in the South didn't fully go Republican yet, but they broke away from the Democratic Party and became independent. Okay, and then they gradually went to the Republican Party. So that's what you want to put for Dixiecrats. And it's also the beginning of the Southern strategy. That was the foundation of the Southern strategy, and which leads me to my next term, George Wallace. George Wallace, again, if you go online trying to look him up online, you're going to find that he was governor of Alabama. And he was a controversial figure. So when you go up online, you're going to see that he was governor of Alabama, and he was a segregationist. If you do that and put that on the exam, she's going to know. So, again, if you want to bring up George Wallace and say that he was governor, that's true. You could put that on the exam, but as long as it's flowing with everything she went over in class, you got to make sure that it coincides with everything she went over in class. So I'm going to define George Wallace right quick. George Wallace was instrumental behind the Southern strategy. He was a Democrat from the South and decided to run for president against Lyndon B. Johnson and Richard Nixon as an independent representing the American Independent Party. He was against civil rights, and he ran on that, and it appealed to a lot of people in the South. He also ran on limited government, state rights, law and order, private property, etc. This appealed to many Northerners, which many were white working class blue collar workers. Wallace campaigned this message using racially coded messages, and that's why you need to look at her PowerPoint to see that. Just go to her PowerPoint so you will see. And when you write your exam, when you do your essay, if you decide to write on Wallace and all that stuff, I can tell you what the racially coded stuff was. You know what I'm saying? So that's how you would want to define it, though. George Wallace was instrumental behind the Southern strategy, for sure. You want to mention that. He was instrumental behind the Southern strategy. He was a Democrat from the South. And he decided to run for president against Lyndon B. Johnson and Richard Nixon, representing the American Independent Party. He was against civil rights. He was against civil rights. He was a segregationist. And he ran on it, and it appealed to a lot of people in the South, a lot of Republicans in the South, a lot of Democrats in the South. They liked it because they were racist down here in the South. They did not want to integrate with blacks. They didn't want to integrate with them in any way, shape, or form. Busing, housing, none of that. But George Wallace also ran on limited government, just like Ronald Reagan. He ran on limited government, small government, free market economics, and a lot of whites in the North like that message. So that's pretty much it. Which leads me to the Southern strategy, which is another term, Southern strategy. The Southern strategy is basically this, and I'm going to define it this way, so you can kind of write it like this. The Southern strategy is basically what George Wallace was doing, except he took the message that he was doing in the South and applied it to, and took it to places outside of the South. Let me explain that again. The Southern strategy is basically a message that George Wallace was stating and tried to apply it to places outside the South. That's the Southern strategy. So that's basically what you need to say. So I'm gonna just put it like this. George Wallace, the Southern strategy is basically George Wallace message resonating with Southerners, and he wanted to apply that same message outside of the South. That's the Southern strategy. The significance of the Southern strategy is to get people outside of the South to get on board with his message. And that happened because he came to Wisconsin, and a lot of people from the North liked what he was saying. The only thing they didn't like what he was doing was he was anti-civil rights. So that's the part in the North, like Wisconsin, they didn't like that part, but they liked everything else he was doing in terms of talking about limited government, free market economics, things like that. So his message was working. And then Richard Nixon saw that he was getting support and stole Wallace's message as his own, and did the exact same thing, and tried to preach this message outside of the South. So that's the significance. So that's the Southern strategy. If you have any questions on the Southern strategy, please let me know. I'm gonna go over it one last time. The Southern strategy is George Wallace's message in the South resonated with people in the South, resonated with Democrats and Republicans, which is why the Democrats in the South broke up. So just say George Wallace's message resonated with people in the South, and he wanted to apply it outside of the South. That's the Southern strategy, to apply that same message outside of the South. The significance is that he wanted to get people from the North to go along with this message, and they responded in a positive way. A lot of people did like it. That's why, like I was telling you, that's why he was in Wisconsin. So you want to mention that when you define it, or if you want to put it in your essay, depending on what you want to write about, you want to throw that in your essay. He went to Wisconsin, he went to Indiana, he went to Maryland, and was getting support. Richard Nixon sees this and steals Wallace's message as his own and apply it to other parts of the country outside of the South. So that's the significance of the Southern strategy. Okay, the next term, just 1 second, I need to drink. Sorry. The next term is the silent majority. Okay, the silent majority is this. I need to resort to my phone because all my notes are on my phone. But I can just freestyle it right quick. Alright, basically what the silent majority is people who were not out there protesting. So when you see the silent majority, write that down immediately. Folks that are not protesting. They are white working class people who, because like you have to understand that most of the people in the 60s, not everybody was protesting. You just had some people doing it. But most of the country was not protesting. So that's the silent majority. That's why they call it the silent majority, because most people are not protesting. Just some people were. So that's the silent majority, and they were working white class, blue collar workers. They are not protesters. That's who George Wallace and Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan, Barry Goldwater wanted to talk to those people who are not out there doing that. And those people, the silent majority, responded. The silent majority are people who's at home, sitting at sitting on the couch watching TV, going to work every day. These are the people who are looking at this stuff on TV going on. They see all the riots on TV. They see all the college kids going crazy. They're hearing about the war over in Vietnam. All kind of stuff was happening, and they were on board with a lot of those messages that the Republican candidates were talking about. So that's what you want to put in as a definition. Look to the terms that I sent you, you'll be fine. The next term is Earl Warren. And Earl Warren was a Supreme Court justice that Lyndon B. Johnson picked. And so that's what you want to put in there. And you basically want to say this. Wallace and Nixon had a problem with Warren being in the Supreme Court because they felt he was too liberal in his views. That's it. You know what I'm saying? So you can just say that Lyndon B. Johnson picked him to be the Supreme Court justice, and the conservatives like Wallace and Nixon had issues with him being there because they felt that he was an activist judge or a liberal judge. Just that's all you need to put. That's it. And if you want to know the significance of it, you can throw in things like this. The Warren Court was liberal because of things like Brown versus Board of Education. And so conservatives had a problem with that. Civil rights issues, the Miranda rights. You know, when you get arrested and the police read you your Miranda rights, you have the right to remain silent. Anything can be used against you. Earl Warren was behind that. So stuff like that. So that's how you want to define it. But when you do these terms and define them in your own words, in your own way. You can twist my words around if you want to. If you get confused about something, again, please let me know as soon as possible. What else? The next term is Tricky Dick. I put a YouTube video, a YouTube link next to this term, just like I did the Ronald Reagan one. So you can click on it and see what Richard Nixon was doing. He earned the name Tricky Dick. Basically, the Democrats gave him that name, and a lot of other people gave him that name because he was running for president in 1968. And he was one of the first people to use campaign ads to make himself look good. And just like Barack Obama and Mitt Romney and John McCain and Bill Clinton and George W. Bush, they all use campaign ads to make themselves look good. You know, they're there for you. In the campaign ads, you hear them say stuff like, "Oh, I'm looking out for you. I'm looking out for the middle class and such and such and such and such." That's what they do. Richard Nixon was one of the first people to do this. He used a TV campaign ad to make himself look good. Democrats at that time just knew he was full of it because he's a seasoned politician. He plays these games all the time. He's a deceiver. But yet, when you looked at that commercial, his campaign ad, he looked pretty good. So that's why he earned the name Tricky Dick. It was other things that was going on too. That's why he got his name. But that was mainly it because of the speech he gave, the Checker speech. So this is how you should define it. I want you to define it like this. He was given the name Richard Nixon when he was running for president in 1968. He gave a speech called the Checkers speech. So, it was a campaign ad that made him look good. But many Democrats knew that he was a seasoned politician and he was totally the opposite of what the commercial suggests. Write that down. That's it. And you'll be fine. The next term is the emerging Republican majority. I didn't see a definition for this in PowerPoint, but basically this is what you should put down in your own words. Just say something like this. And I'm gonna read it off my thing here. I did not see a definition of this in the PowerPoint, but basically you can say this and use your own words when writing this. Term. Okay, just say that Ronald Reagan, William F. Buckley, John Birch Society, Barry Goldwater, um, were some of the key figures that unified conservatives. That's the emerging Republican majority. So again, Ronald Reagan, William F. Buckley, John Birch Society, Young Americans for Freedom, the National Review, Barry Goldwater, George Wallace, all got conservatives and Republicans to unify. That's all you need to put. That's it. That's it. So you want to write that. Put that on your index card. The next term is the Philadelphia Plan. The Philadelphia Plan is this. It's sort of like affirmative action, but you don't really need to put affirmative action on there, or you could. You could just say it's sort of like that. And this happened under Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon, and it appeared to be a liberal plan. But you could just put it like this, word it like this. Sorry, I got a drink. The Philadelphia Plan occurred under Nixon and appeared to be a liberal plan on the surface. This was done to make Nixon look good, even though Nixon probably wouldn't have supported this in his heart. I meant to put wouldn't have. He wouldn't have supported this in his heart. But this plan is like affirmative action at the federal level. It's sort of like that. If you are a contractor and want a government contract, then you must hire minorities. You have to hire people that reflect what your city looks like. He made this a local government thing. This is obviously in Philadelphia, but if it worked there in Philadelphia, it could work anywhere else. So that's the Philadelphia Plan. So basically, Richard Nixon gave out government contracts. This is it in a nutshell. He gave out government contracts in Philadelphia for companies that hire minorities, for employment, because the city of Philadelphia have a lot of minorities, and Richard Nixon felt that if you want this government contract and you want some money from us, you need to make your workplace more diverse. It should look like the city. It should reflect what the city looked like, and that's the Philadelphia Plan. In other cities and states, we're watching this, we're seeing this, because if it can work there, it may work in other cities, and other cities would take notice and try to hire minorities so they can get those government contracts. So that's the significance. And then the next term is the Consumer Products Safety Commission. The Consumer Products Safety Commission formed in 1970. Congress created this commission, which was a regulatory program that investigated and reported on household goods. This Congress created this while Nixon was president. So again, it looks like it's liberal, even though Nixon's a conservative. This is why everybody was confused with Nixon. He was Tricky Dick. That's why he earned his name Tricky Dick, because he supports stuff like this, and yet he's a Republican. But there's an agenda behind it. There's an agenda behind all this. So when you write your essay, I'm going to get into it. But the Consumer Product Safety Commission formed in 1970. Congress created this commission, which was a regulatory program that investigated and reported on household goods. This Congress created this while Nixon was president. This was a federal program that comes off as liberal, yet Nixon is a conservative that hated the federal government. That's all you really need to put. That's it. The next term is Roe versus Wade. Roe versus Wade. My throat is still a little parched, so pardon me, and I know I've been talking for about half an hour. Boy, I understand why Professor Hernandez drinks her water. Man. Okay. Roe versus Wade is the next term. Again, do not go online looking for this term, because if you do, and you define it the way that people online are defining it, you're going to get it wrong. This is how she wants you to define Roe versus Wade. So when you write this definition down. Do not write what's online. Roe versus Wade. You can say Chief Justice Warren Burger was appointed by Nixon to be the next Supreme Court appointee. Burger is conservative, but he did a lot of liberal things that stunt Nixon and turned off conservatives. Burger overturned state laws on Roe versus Wade in 1973, making abortion legal for women. That's it. That's it. Let me say that again. Write this down. Chief Justice Warren Burger was appointed by Nixon, and Burger is a conservative, but he did a lot of things that liberals support and stunned conservatives and turned Nixon off. Burger overturned state laws on Roe versus Wade in 1973, making abortion legal for women, for example. Write that down. That's it. So rewind this video if you have to, and put it that way. But write it in a way that's in your own words, because I don't want her thinking that we're working together and cheating and all that stuff. The next term is new federalism, and what this means is this. This is Richard Nixon's way to try to take control away from Congress and federal bureaucrats, which is the federal government, and give controls and rights back to the states. Nixon did this to go around federal government, which were senators, congressmen, etc. Anything federal. So that's what new federalism is. The new federal government will be the states, not the actual federal government itself. So that's what Nixon was trying to do. He was trying to get more power, more control back to the states. So if you're a senator or a congressman, you are representing the federal government. So he didn't want you to have that type of power. He didn't want you to control anything. He wanted the states to have control. So that's shrinking government from the federal government back to the states. So I wrote the term down. You can look at it, but that's pretty much, he wants to give control and rights back to the states, which is why I underlined it. So you want to go ahead and look at that right quick. The next term is Family Assistance Plan. Okay. Family Assistance Plan. This occurred because Nixon's Urban Affairs Council tried to reform welfare programs. So Nixon's came up, created an Urban Affairs Council, and what they tried to do was basically try to destroy welfare programs and things like that. And instead, they were going to give people a lump sum of money and give them that. And on the surface, that looks cool, but it may not be enough at the end of the day to take care of a family for a year. So Nixon, being tricky dick, thought he was trying to be slick by saying, hey, I'll give you a lump sum of money. Okay, but then some Democrats supported this on the surface, but other Democrats saw it and caught what he was trying to do. So Democrats were debating amongst themselves, but basically Richard Nixon was trying to get rid of welfare programs like food stamps, housing. He was trying to strip all that. That's why he did that. I'll give you a lump sum so you can stop getting welfare. He was trying to be slick. So I wrote that definition down. You can take a look at it. OSHA, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. This was created in 1970, again under Richard Nixon, which appears to be a liberal thing, but he was being slick. He was being tricky dick, and I'm gonna get into everything about that. But this was just to make sure that safety measures were in place at the workplace. This is a law Nixon signed into law. This law Nixon signed, and it appeared to be liberal. So I'm gonna repeat that again. OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, was created in 1970, again under Nixon, to make sure there was safety measures in place at the workplace. This is law that Nixon signed, and liberals supported it because it appeared to be liberal, and conservatives really wasn't feeling that. But Nixon had an agenda. He had an agenda. He really didn't support it in his heart. So when you write your essay, I'm gonna talk about that. I'm gonna write an essay and I'm gonna send it to you guys. The next term is Warren Burger himself. Warren Burger is Supreme Court Justice from 1969 through 1986. So you want to write that down. which is why I put it in bold. He was Supreme Court Justice from 1969 through 1986. He is a conservative that was appointed by Richard Nixon to the Supreme Court. However, Berger expanded many laws liberals supported, which stunned Nixon and turned conservatives off across the country. The Berger court appeared liberal because he upheld affirmative action. He upheld Roe v. Wade. He upheld busing, expanded civil rights, etc. Nixon wanted to appoint Berger so he can get rid of those things or try to deflect those things. Berger ended up keeping them in place or expanding them further, which ticked Nixon off. So Nixon probably assumed he was a conservative, and Berger was a conservative, but he wasn't. But a lot of liberals supported what he was doing. He didn't get rid of those programs, or affirmative action and things like that. Equal Rights Amendment. Just the next term. Equal Rights Amendment. Congress passed this amendment in 1972, so you want to mention the year, but it never really went into effect because conservatives started this amendment because they feared it would break down family structure, and women feared that the law would be nullified. Because this is more for women, the Equal Rights Amendment. That's a amendment for women. So look at that term. I defined it. It was in 1972. That's when the amendment passed. But it never really went into effect because of conservatives stalling it. Henry Kissinger. He is that's the next term. He was Nixon's National Security Council advisor. Kissinger ran the department. That's all you really need to put. He was Nixon's National Security Advisor. Henry Kissinger ran the department. What was the significance? I didn't put the significance part, and I should have. But what was significant was that he helped Nixon. I mean, obviously, Kissinger, I believe, was a Democrat. He was a moderate Democrat. Nixon is a conservative, a Republican, so it's kind of odd that those two would work together. I don't know why Nixon picked them, but he did. But Nixon helped, Kissinger rather, helped Nixon out with foreign affairs. A lot of foreign affairs and things like that, especially with Russia and China. So that's really what you need to put in there. He involved himself in that. He involved himself in the Vietnam War and stuff like that. So he basically, that was the significance of Henry Kissinger relative to Nixon. And this French word, diente or something like that, I can't really pronounce it, sorry. But that's the next term. Basically means to ease the tension between Russia and the United States. And Kissinger played a major role in easing that conflict with Russia when it came to the nuclear age. So that's pretty much it. So that's what diente means. Basically means to ease tension, ease conflict against the two superpowers, which was Russia and the United States. Because the Cold War, they were aiming missiles at each other. Henry Kissinger got in there, talked to Russia, and they came to some agreement where, hey, okay, well, we'll ease up. We'll be cool. You cool with us, we'll be cool with you, type of thing. Kissinger did that. That's diente. The next term is Vietnamization. What that is, Nixon started to bring the troops home and moved combat roles to South Vietnam. Basically letting the Vietnam people run their own country again as American troops leave. That's Vietnamization. That's Vietnamization, where they are running their own country now. America is out of there. America has moved to South Vietnam. The North Vietnam can run their own country. That's Vietnamization. And I put that in the definition. You can look at it. The next term is Operation Menu. Operation Menu was a sneaky thing. Very sneaky, but I'm going to define it. Nixon basically left Vietnam only to bomb Cambodia without American people knowing it. So the American people didn't know that he did this. This was to stop communism, but Nixon again deceived the country by not telling the country what he was doing. You have to remember, a lot of Americans wanted this war to end. They did not support Vietnam at all. They wanted the war to end, period. So Nixon promised the country he'll do that. He told the country, if I'm president, I will end this war, period. So the previous term, Vietnamization, that's what he did. He left North Vietnam. They were in South Vietnam. So the country is seeing it's like, okay, he's leaving, you know. But then he goes into Cambodia, which is Operation Ming. He goes into Cambodia to start conflict, to stop communism. So he bombs Cambodia. And the American people did not know it. He didn't tell them about it. Again, this is why he earns the name Tricky Dick. He did not tell anybody about it. But that comes back to bite him in the butt. So, and I'm gonna get into that. Opening China. That's another term. Basically, Kissinger and Nixon were in talks with China only because Russia and China both communists didn't trust one another, and Kissinger exploited this and started talks with China and made arrangements. Remember, he talked to Russia about the Diente program about nuclear weapons. America did the same thing with China, except they called it Opening China. So read those two definitions and you'll see what they mean. The next term is Paris Peace Accord, which got underway in 1973. It's basically stated that the U.S. would remove its troops within 60 days in Vietnam. So that's what that is. They're leaving. We're going to remove our troops in 60 days. And in return, the North Vietnams would return prisoners of war, basically American prisoners, back to the United States. So America's going to leave within 60 days out of Vietnam. The North Vietnam is like, okay, if you agree to do that, we're going to give you back your prisoners, and all is fine and dandy, and that's what they did. But in 1975, North Vietnam went and attacked South Vietnam, and it was nothing that America could do because they were long gone by 1975. The next term is the Kent State shootings. The Kent State shootings occurred because people found out that Richard Nixon lied. He said he was going to end the war, and what ended up happening is people found out that he went and bombed Cambodia. So once American troops didn't come home, but instead went to Cambodia and started a war there, a lot of people got mad again. They started protesting again. They started getting pissed again. Why are you sitting up here starting wars? Cambodia didn't do anything to America, yet you went and bombed them because they're communists. So that's why the Kent State shootings occurred. Like all the colleges across the country were protesting. Even UWM, people at UWM were protesting. But the National Guard at this college in Ohio, Kent State shootings, they shot 4 students. 4 students died because of the National Guard shooting at protesters. So this is how you need to define it. And I put it on here for you. This happened because people found out that Nixon invaded Cambodia and bombed it. So students protested again, and 4 students died as a result because of the National Guard shooting at protesters. Some of the students were not protesters. They were really walking to their next class. That's pretty much what you need to put. The next term is the Pentagon Papers. The Pentagon Papers is this. And this is why you start to see people in the United States not trust their government anymore. At this point, people hated the United States government bad. They did not trust the government at all because of the Pentagon Papers. The Pentagon Papers is this. Daniel Ellsberg. He's the one who exposed this. He exposed the war in Vietnam and was a He exposed that the war in Vietnam was a focus and that every single president was deceiving the American public about the war and what they wanted to keep. Let me reread that again. Daniel Ellsberg exposed that the war in Vietnam was a focus and that every single president was deceiving the American public about the war and what they wanted to keep the war going. Every president, Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, and Richard Nixon. So that's 5 presidents in a row that wanted to keep things away from the American people and use all this trickery and deceiving tactics so they can keep the Vietnam War going. Harry Truman, Dwight Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, and Richard Nixon all deceived the American public about the Vietnam War. That's the Pentagon Papers. So once Daniel Ellsberg put that out there, people got mad. People started really hating the government, the United States government. I put a link to that as well, so you can click on that link and you can see what I'm talking about. The next term is CREEP, which is the Committee to Re-elect President Nixon. CREEP was formed in 1972. They broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate office complex in Washington, D.C. You want to put that down. They tried to illegally wiretap the building. They hired a covert group called the Plumbers to do this. The White House was behind this operation. That's all you need to put. That's it. The next term is Watergate. Watergate was a 2-year operation that led to Nixon's resignation before being impeached. In a nutshell, he did illegal things to make sure he would win the election against McGovern. McGovern is the person on the Democratic side who's running against Nixon at this time in the election. 1 second. My throat. So let me repeat that again. Watergate was a 2-year operation that led to Nixon's resignation before being impeached. In a nutshell, he did illegal things to make sure he would win the election against McGovern, who was running against him. McGovern's the Democratic nominee. He had people break into the Democrats' headquarters in Washington, D.C. at the Watergate office complex. That's all you need to put. The next term is the Plumbers. The Plumbers were hired by CREEP to wiretap the Democratic headquarters at Watergate and to stop leaks about Nixon, which was an example, was the Pentagon Papers, and to get information on Democrats and George McGovern, who was running against Nixon for president. The White House was behind this operation. So basically, the Plumbers were hired by CREEP to break into the Democratic National headquarters at the Watergate office complex and install these wiretaps, while at the same time trying to stop leaks from coming out against Richard Nixon. Anything bad that was Nixon was doing that was coming out in the press, whatever, the Plumbers would combat it and try to halt people from trying to leak information about Richard Nixon. But yet they wanted to wiretap Democrats. So this led all the way back up to Nixon. Nixon knew about this and he got himself in trouble. Bob Woodward is the next term, and then the next term after that is Carl Bernstein. These are 2 journalists for the Washington Post. They exposed this story, the Watergate scandal. Nixon could have got away with this scandal had they not exposed this scandal. They exposed this scandal because they had an informant that came forward by the name of Deep Throat. Deep Throat is another term too, so I guess you can. But basically, this informant came forward and exposed the Watergate scandal, and he called himself Deep Throat. So that's what you want to put for Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. I doubt if she have both of them on the test, because like these are just terms. You just need to answer 5 of them. I don't. If you see one, you're not going to see the other because they both did the same thing. They're both journalists. They both work together, and the Deep Throat guy went to both of them and talked about the Watergate scandal, and that was it. I put a YouTube link down here too. Deep Throat was this is another term. Deep Throat was an informant who breaks the Watergate scandal to reporters. The informant name was Mark Felt, an assistant director of the FBI. When I wrote down that term on that paper, that's what you need to put down on the exam. That the informant who breaks the Watergate scandal to reporters was Mark Felt. He was an assistant director of the FBI. That's who Deep Throat was. Okay. The next term is Spiro Agnew. Spiro Agnew was Nixon's vice president. After Nixon, who is president, resigns, the vice president usually takes over, but Agnew was corrupt as well. He had tax evasion problems and things like that. So he did nothing wrong in terms of Watergate stuff, but he was just corrupt with tax stuff. You know, his tax evasion, crazy stuff. And so he ended up resigning when Nixon resigned. So that's all you need to put. I wrote that definition down for you too. So look at that. The next term is Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford is appointed by Richard Nixon. So let me put it like this. Nixon appointed Ford to be president when he resigned. Ford was House Speaker at the time, and Nixon only chose him because he knew Ford didn't have much experience at things, especially foreign policy. So I put that into terms so you guys can check that out. And I'm going to read it again. Gerald Ford. Nixon appointed Ford to be president when he resigned. Ford was House Speaker at the time, and Nixon only chose him because he knew Ford didn't have much experience at things, especially foreign policy. That's all you need to put. The Budget and Impoundment Control Act. That's the next term. In 1974, because of all the things that went on with Nixon and his administration, with Watergate, the war in Vietnam and Cambodia, and the Pentagon Papers, that showed all the presidents were deceiving Americans about the Vietnam War. Congress decided to take away executive powers from presidents on some things. So I'm going to repeat that. The Budget and Impoundment Control Act in 1974, because of all the things that went on with Nixon and his administration with Watergate, the war in Vietnam and Cambodia, and the Pentagon Papers that leaked, as well as the Deep Throat person that came out, that showed all the presidents were deceiving Americans about the Vietnam War. Congress decided to take some executive powers away from the president, and because people were getting mad at their government. So that's pretty much what that is. And the last term is Federal Election Campaign Act. This is basically this means that they place caps on public funding campaigns for candidates, taking away basically the ability for presidents to gain funds on their own. So basically, like, they put caps on people. Like, if you want to donate some money, like, let's just say you was rich, you want to donate some money, you can't donate no more than such and such. They put a cap on it. So if they tell you the max you can give a president, if you want to donate to his campaign, is $10,000, you can't give them no more than that. So that's what that means. So that's all the terms right there. So I hope I was helpful. I sent you guys a copy of the terms. I'm going to send you a copy of the exam, the essays. I'm going to write all 4 essays. I'm going to send them to you. I'm going to throw the terms in there. I'm going to highlight them, bold them up, whatever, so you guys can get an idea of how things went in the 60s and 70s. And, you know, because I want you guys to pass. So I'm a history buff. This is not my major. I'm a major in physics and astronomy. So I'm a science guy. I'm not a history guy in terms of a major, but I am a history buff. I have an interest in history. I have an interest in a lot of things. So I practically know this stuff kind of There are some things that I learned in classes past semester, but for the most part, I am a student when it comes to history. But even though that is not my major is physics with astronomy emphasis. But if you have any questions, please let me know. Don't hesitate. Please hit me up, email me, hit me up on Facebook, whatever the case may be. I'm gonna send you this video, obviously. That's pretty much it. Just don't go online looking for stuff, though. I would not do that if I were, because Professor Hernandez and Kat are really good at catching people doing that stuff online. They can just go to the websites, go to the pages to see where you at, and they can do it. It's not that hard, so they know. Now, if you want to go online and get an idea of what they're talking about, okay, this is what this means, and then you want to like connect it to what we went over in class, that's acceptable to them as long as you do it in your own words. You know what I'm saying? But that's pretty much it. So just hit me up. It's not that hard. It really is not. So especially like when I write the essay, I'm gonna show you guys how to do that, and how to do things in alphabetical, kind of chronological order, and then I'm gonna throw terms in there. That's why she has the terms here. These are the terms that you should be, like the identification part. The identification part, you want to define the terms, give a brief definition. That's it. You're also going to use these exact same terms when you write your essay. You want to throw these terms in whatever it is you're writing. You want to throw terms in there. And then as far as the short answer, multiple choice ones, these terms going to be there. These same terms. That's why you need to know all these terms. That's why you need to put all these terms on your index card. Put them all on your index card and define them. I'm gonna send you a scanned copy of my index card too, so you see how I do it. Okay. So I hope this was helpful, man. I hope I helped you guys. I mean, I tried my best. I've never done this before. I never tutored people before or anything like that. So this is my first time. So, and my voice is still parched. So, and I have a messy bed because I just woke up prior to doing this. About 40 minutes before I woke up to do this. So I wish you guys good luck on this exam. Okay, and hit me up if you have any problems or questions. I'll help you. You know what I'm saying? Peace and love.